Hey guys, in today's video I want to go over just how powerful having an external SSD is when playing PUBG on Xbox. Before we get into it though, make sure to like the video if you find it useful and subscribe to stay up to date on everything that I publish. In my Fix Vikendi videos that I put out the last couple weeks, I talked about how big of an advantage having an external SSD is when playing PUBG on Xbox. Mainly for Vikendi, but it also alleviates some of the issues we see on Miramar. I had no personal evidence of this as I have never played PUBG from an external SSD before, but my friend and squadmate Arch Nemesis did. He was constantly in every pregame lobby a good 20 to 30 seconds before anyone else, and he could see all of the buildings while flying down to the ground, and never had issues entering them and finding loot early game. To say that I was jealous would be an understatement. In my opinion, Vikendi is the best looking map PUBG has made to date, packing in more detail and variety than all of the others. But it came at a cost, and I think that we can all agree by this point that that cost was a little too high for console. Not only can you not see buildings as you parachute down to the ground on Vikendi, you can't really enter them and pick up loot for some time after landing. This is especially true on a hot drop. But I wasn't just going to give in and buy a $60 to $100 external SSD just for one game. I didn't feel it was right to expect the customer to need extra hardware to get a game to work on a system that the developers have spent over 1 year trying to fix it for. I was firm in my belief that I would not get an external SSD and I'd just deal with the early game issues until PUBG Corp fixed them, just like everybody else. That was until my friend gave me some good news. He recently upgraded his SSD and said that I could have his old one because he basically had no use for it. So what did I do? Did I stay true to my stance and stand up and say, no, I will not give in, the game must be fixed? Absolutely not. I actually traded him a shirt that I had, and I bought him lunch in exchange for the SSD. Though he was just going to give it to me anyway, I felt like I needed to do something to pay him back a little bit. Arch Nemesis saves me both in-game and in real life. A true squadmate indeed. But I started thinking to myself, well, I'm going to look like a complete jackass now that I have an external SSD after I talk so much about how I'd never get one, and it's not up to the customers to have to pay more to get the game to run properly. But hopefully, with my explanation here, you can at least understand my story and why I'm actually playing with PUBG installed on an external SSD now. But now that that's out of the way, let's get into the actual comparison of what benefits having PUBG installed on an external SSD gives you and just how bad it is without one. So like I said before, you'll notice a difference right away when queuing up for a match. Without an SSD, you'll sometimes miss the pregame lobby completely. You won't know what map you're playing on until you're already in the plane, and I find this especially true on Miramar and Vikendi, but any of the maps really. I can hear the plane noise sometimes before I can even see what's going on. And this can cause you to miss out on potential early jumps. There have been times where my team is discussing where we're going to land, and I'm like, wait, what map are we even on? So with an SSD, you'll be able to throw snowballs and apples in people's faces until your heart's content. You'll also have the added benefit of telling your squad what map you're playing on. But who really cares about that? That's not that big of an issue. The biggest issue is with Vikendi and Miramar and the early game rendering. I have some examples here to show you in the background, showing off a normal install versus an external SSD install. You can see just how drastic the difference is. With the normal install, you can't see any of the buildings before landing, depending on how far away from the plane you are jumping from. And once you get on the ground, it still takes up to 15 to 20 seconds for the buildings to load in at times, giving you a massive disadvantage early game. It's almost impossible to pick up items and defend yourself when you land and the buildings aren't there and you're bouncing all around and, it's just hard to pick anything up. With the game installed on an external SSD, you see the buildings mid-flight down to the ground, and you're able to enter the building safely without fear of getting stuck or bouncing all over the place to try and find loot. Now just look at this example of a jump at Castle. It's absolutely ridiculous and unacceptable without an SSD. While flying down to the ground, I think I'm going to land somewhere at least on the base of the castle, but it ends up that I landed outside the walls and I can't get up there because, all this stuff's actually in the way, but I can't see it. I'm on the Xbox One X, so with the X and the SSD, I probably now have the best setup possible for early game rendering. Without the SSD, you can see basically nothing. There's no indication where the buildings are besides the patches of brown on the ground, but you can't really tell where the outside castle walls are, or any of the interior courtyard areas either. With the SSD, you can see everything that you need by the time you're hitting the ground. Then you're free to walk into the buildings, walk into the interiors, and find a weapon and defend yourself. My friend's on the Xbox One S, and was able to send me a couple videos of his comparisons as well. He did 2 jumps at the castle, in a near identical location, one with the game installed on the SSD and one installed internally on the Xbox. And it's the same idea here. It's just crazy how bad it is without the SSD. And this is the reality for 90 to 95% of the game's player base, if not more. You might think that just because a couple of your friends and you have an SSD and you have the game installed on the SSD, that most people playing the game have the game installed on an external hard drive. But that's not true. I would venture to say that 90 to 95% of the game's player base have the game installed on the internal hard drive of the Xbox. They don't have any special equipment that they're playing the game off of. So this really gives those with the game installed on an SSD a massive advantage early game. Now that I have one, there's no looking back, that's for sure. I'm not going to go back just because I feel bad that there's other players that don't have it. I mean, obviously, I'd be silly not to use this to my advantage, and some might even think that it's cheap or cheating. I don't really necessarily think that that is the case. There are some things where using a keyboard and mouse, I think that's flat out cheating in this game on console, but using an external SSD to play the game off of it just because the buildings render in the beginning on hot drops and things like that, that's not cheating in my eyes. But if you're using a keyboard and mouse to play the game, I don't think that that is fair. I think that's blatant cheating. But let's not get into that. That's a completely different topic where I can go on and on and on. So it wouldn't be productive to get into it in this video. But it's just unfortunate how big the difference actually is by having the game installed internally and having the game installed on an external SSD. Once again, huge shout out to my in-game and real-life squadmate arch nemesis for hooking me up with this SSD. It definitely makes the game a little bit less frustrating. I hope your takeaway from this video isn't, I need to go out and get an SSD right now. It's so much better. Look at how much better it is with the SSD. That's not my goal of the video. My goal is not to promote you buying extra hardware for your Xbox just to get one game to function properly. Instead, the major takeaway should be that this stuff is unacceptable, and if it's not fixed to a reasonable level in the next update or two, we need to bring even more attention to it to try and get it resolved. PUBG Corp knows how bad it is, and no doubt they're trying to fix it. But are they trying to fix it as hard as they could be? Unfortunately, we don't really know the answer to that question. This is the type of thing that could kill off a player base, especially with so many good games on the horizon. If this thing lingers on too long, like I said in my previous videos about fixing Vikendi, then we could see even more of a decline in the player base, and PUBG on console could be in trouble. Thanks for watching. Like I said in the beginning, if you found this video useful, let me know by hitting the like button, and subscribe to stay up to date on everything that I publish here on my channel. Check out my Twitter and Discord, the links are in the description below, and also take a look at my level 3 helmet design on Teespring. I wish nothing but the best for this game, and I love it to death. I play it basically every night, and I cover it, and I've covered it here for over a year. But there comes a point in time where things need to change, and I think that a lot of people have reached that time where if things don't change soon, PUBG on console is going to see a massive decline in player base until maybe new content is added, but hopefully they get these things fixed before anything else, because that is the most important thing right now. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, but with that being said, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Until next time, I'll see you later.